Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC. Investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters on KPFT Houston. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 11 a.m. Got a great show lined up for you today. Billions of dollars go unclaimed each and every year. People forget things that they have out there, or maybe they have loved ones that have passed away and those assets get kind of lost in space. A lot of people don't think that this pertains to them, but turns out it might. Our guest today, Mary Pitman, is the author of the book, The Little Book of Missing Money. So we will do a deep dive into this fascinating topic on where to find hidden money or unclaimed money. I know you'll get a lot out of this, so keep listening, stay tuned. If you are a longtime listener of the show, we always take just the first few minutes of the show to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the Houston and the Gulf Coast area when it comes to financial literacy. Okay, let's take a pause because within the last 2 to 4 weeks, we've had so much stuff going on with COVID-19 and the coronavirus. You've heard me talk about Houston Money Week, which I'm a part of the leadership team on Houston Money Week, and we have had to hit pause on that as well. As you know, Financial Literacy Week nationally is in April. Houston Money Week is our representation of that. And when we say Money Week, it's usually an entire month long. And what Houston Money Week is kind of famous for is we have the free financial educational workshops that are available to really anybody in the Houston and the Gulf Coast area for no cost. And we have different topics that we talk to you about that range all over from credit repair, building your credit. We have some of our nonprofit partners who are part of the VITA program that will do tax preparation for free. But one of the things that we all have in common is that these are live workshops and seminars. And so we are having to kind of pivot and adjust to that just like everybody else. And so we've essentially hit pause on those live events as everybody's been ordered to stay at home and shelter in place. But we've been trying to make a push towards getting some of this information online. And so that is something that you will see us roll out with within the next couple of weeks here. We're trying to still do as much as we can in those areas. In addition to that, that we have been put together the scholarships for lower education, even adult learning. And so we are still going to make good on those scholarships. That's an essay contest. In fact, everybody on the leadership team is still doing the same thing. So we're all at home sheltering in place. So we've got a lot of time to read those essays. So we'd encourage you to send those essays to us, and we will make good on that. To find out more about that, you can visit the website houstonmoneyweek.org. With that, let's go ahead and talk to Mary here so we can leverage our time, make sure we have the most time with Mary. Mary, how are you doing?
I am wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You are the author of the book when it comes to finding missing money, The Little Book of Missing Money, a quick and easy guide to finding money that is rightfully yours. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself so that listeners can get to know you?
Well, I've been a nurse for 39 years, and this started out when one of my coworkers told me about the whole concept of unclaimed property, and I kind of rolled my eyes and said, oh my God, you're so gullible. Give me the information. I'll show you where the scam is. Well, I found 2 listings for my father who died in 2001, and I filled out the paperwork. It's a little more involved when there's a death. And about 5 weeks later, I had a check in my hand for over $2,500. I became a believer. And then I found money for a nurse upstairs, and the quick version of that, she had been being contacted by attorneys and businesses that all wanted a lot of money to help her get it. One guy wanted $800, another one wanted $2,100. She said, I was determined to find this on my own, but I didn't know where to begin. And that was where the idea for the book first came up. So fast forward about 8 weeks after that, I get a call from her. She's at the post office and she's crying. She had 3 checks. They came to $2,556. And when I told her the total amount, she just started sobbing. She said, I don't know if you heard, but I tripped in a parking lot and fell and broke my arm. I've been out of work. I don't have insurance. I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. When you get a check for $2,500 and you didn't know how you were going to pay your rent, that's like winning the lottery. So that rocket propelled my desire to do the book, because you never know who's struggling. You never know who's praying for a financial miracle. So that's why I did the book.
I love that. I love that. And that is exactly one of the things that, it's found money is kind of the best money there, because it's not, you don't already have it in the budget. it's not necessarily spoken for yet. So it's only a good thing. Let's kind of start. We'll do kind of a deep dive into it, because I've got a lot of questions on this. I have clients that will give me phone calls and say, hey, I got a letter from the state and they're saying that I have old accounts there. And these same clients will mention that they got an email from somebody on the internet saying, hey, we can locate this for you and we'll charge X number of dollars. What is your thinking on that sort of thing?
By the time you give those people all the information they need, and first of all, you don't know for sure that they're legitimate, then you might as well do the work yourself, because you had to provide all of the information. Each state has different laws regarding professional finders and what they can charge. Sometimes there's a limit on how long the money has to be in the state possession, and sometimes there's a limit of how much the finder is allowed to charge. In Texas, and I have a listing of all of the state laws regarding the professional finders. In Texas, it says fees are limited to 10%. The person must be licensed through the Texas Department of Public Safety Private Security Bureau and hold a current sales tax permit. So if they don't meet that, then they're not legit.
So that's kind of a litmus test there. What you just mentioned, which is important, is that each state's going to have its own guidelines. You've already kind of looked up Texas for us and said that there's a 10% finder's fee. So one, that's a litmus test to see if they're legit. If they're charging more than that, then they're probably not legit. The other thing is that I'm very frugal. When I hear 10% finder's fee, it sounds like this is something that with the guidance of your book, they may be able to do themselves. Is that right?
Absolutely. My feeling is you shouldn't have to pay a ransom to get your own money. And there's so many other places that finders know about that regular people don't, besides the state unclaimed property office. Like one place is the court registry. And they hold funds including cash bonds, funds in dispute, money for a minor until they reach age 18, restitution to a victim in a criminal case, surplus money from a trustee sale, garnishments, child or spousal support, criminal bail, civil bonds, investment earnings, and civil judgment payments. If you have a home and it went to foreclosure, and if that home sells for more than what you owed on it, you're entitled to the excess, and this is where the money goes. but you have to know to look for it there. There was a guy in Rochester, New York, who was so distraught over his home being foreclosed that he cut the gas line, blew up the house and himself. He had no idea that he was entitled to the $44,000 above what the house sold for.
Wow. I made a note when you said that, because the only thing, and I've been doing finance for many years now, the only thing that really was on my radar was the state unclaimed stuff. I think that's the one that people hear the most about. The list that you
Right.
just gave us of kind of an extensive list of things that the restitution, if the property sold, cash bonds, all of that stuff is very, very relevant, and that's the court registry. I would have never even thought about that. So that's huge. That's important for people to kind of have that on their radar there. What other things do people need to know about this? We talked about the kind of the finder's fee and that sort of thing, but what other things do we need to think about when we're looking at unclaimed sources of money?
Well, for one thing, businesses have unclaimed property, and that's something that never gets publicized. And right now, businesses can use all the help they can get. For example, in 2012, Tenneco, a global auto parts manufacturing company in Illinois, filed 45 unclaimed property companies filed 45 unclaimed property claims for a company that they bought in 1996. Shortly after, they received a check from that filing for $8.1 million. Now, not every business is going to have that much, but even if you have a business that went out of business, look it up. If you bought another business, look under the name of that former company.
I love that. And actually, that was one of the things that made this show happen, is as you had sent me information about this, not only were you telling me about the book, but KPFT, the radio station that we're on, had some of those unclaimed funds out there, and you shared that with me. And it's a nonprofit organization, so we're always looking for anytime there's money out there. We're looking for it. So that is something that is real. It's important. In fact, even personally, you were able to kind of go into the Texas and look at Christopher. Now, there are other Christopher Hensleys out there, but you were able to find Christopher Hensley, that there was some money out there. So I think a lot of times people get surprised. They may think that there's nothing out there for them. Let's say they do check for themselves, but they don't see anything. What other things could they do?
Well, check at least once a year. And a lot of people listening are probably thinking, I know about that. I checked it before. There was nothing there. New listings get added all the time. So you need to check at least once a year. National Find Your Missing Money Day is April 16th. You can check any day of the year, though. It costs nothing to look. You have nothing to lose. Right now, I pulled up the last name Houston and the city of Houston. There's listings for like the African American Museum of Houston. That is $846.51. And you can look up anybody. You can't claim it if it's not you, but ACHE Greater Houston Chapter, a check for $3,500. ADESA Houston, ADESA, $1,250. But the majority of the money is for individuals.
Oh, I love
that. And so far, Texas has returned $3 billion to rightful owners.
Wow. So in my head, and I work with a lot of retirees, so the age range of my clients are typically a little bit older, but what I come to find out is that the more time that passes, the more these things tend to bubble up, and you might not think about it. When I read the book, one of the first things that I thought about, well, what about my grandparents, family members, people that are close to me, and it tends to be, in my experience, that there's more stuff out there to forget about.
Yes. And an important aspect is uniformly with the state unclaimed property sites, and I don't have the answer for you for Texas specifically, but the listings online only go back so far. Like Illinois only goes back to 1992. If you think you have something prior to that, you have to contact them. Same thing for the state of New York. Their listings only go back to 1985. So that's a huge thing to keep in mind, especially if you're looking for older listings.
So that is something they're all going to have different limits as far as how much information is available online. That doesn't mean that there's not anything out there for you or other people that you're looking, and be aware of it, especially if you know of something that you know it's there, but you don't see it. That would be an argument. Don't give up. Contact them directly and ask and see. So we talked about the state stuff when we talked about the court registry. What other tips or ideas, or maybe even stories of people that have had positive experiences doing this, would you like to share with us?
Well, for one thing, there's savings bonds. The current number is over 72 million savings bonds worth over $26 billion. I contacted a place in Boston. It was called the Society for the Propagation of Faith. This is a place that gets their orders from the Vatican. And I told the lady, I said, it's not that much, it's $15,000. And she said, $15,000 in the mission world is a huge amount of money. $15,000 will fund an orphanage for a year. So that kind of took my breath away and made me cry.
It's true.
And it's true for other nonprofits. That's another thing that they can do. And anybody who has ever changed jobs and didn't roll over their retirement plan, there may be listings out there for you. One of the places you can check is unclaimedretirementbenefits.com. It does require that you enter your Social Security number. It does not store it, and it is a secure site. So if your employer listed it with them, that's the best way you have to find it. Otherwise, you have to go back through previous employers and find out. I was surprised that I had a pension from a hospital that I also had a 403B at, and they kept sending me stuff. And I thought, why do they keep sending me this? I rolled over the 403B, and then I looked at it was a defined benefit pension plan. I thought, I have a pension? Oh my God. Because I'm not supposed to have stuff and not know it because I wrote the book.
This is very good information for people out there. In fact, I work primarily with higher education, so most of my clients they either have a 403B or a pension or both, and a lot of times they'll say job hop, but they may have taught at one university out of the state and then they moved to Texas, and so there's this disconnect here. And the one that I spend a lot of time on is those pensions, because those do, for whatever reason, maybe it's not a huge pension, but if it's not something that they're clear on, it's easy for that to fall off because they may not have even understood it. 403B, you're kind of keeping track of the money, you're counting it, but with the pension, you may not even understand. So for that to be kind of lost in space, that's huge. And if you consider the companies that maybe even have private pensions, and then you worked for a company several years ago and then the company disappeared, the company went out of business, the pensions might still be there. And this that you just mentioned, can you name that website again?
Unclaimedretirementbenefits.com. If the company went out of business, check at the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, pbgc.gov. They have listings there's a lot of airlines there. There used to be Enron too, but I guess everybody from Enron ended up getting their money. Like Eastern Airlines, Pan Am, TWA, Jacobson Stores, big companies, little companies. The thing is, the plan is underfunded and it is expected to be bankrupt by 2025. So if you think you had a pension, now is the time to check and claim it.
Wow. Wow. So that's an important thing to note. I put a star next to that because it sounds like the clock is ticking there, that there may be
It is.
some money out there for you, but if it goes through bankruptcy and gets discharged, then it basically is a done deal. And so having that deadline to log in, that would be money that would just evaporate if you don't take advantage of it. The second website you just give, that pension benefit guarantee, I've had to play detective sometimes with these missing pensions, and they even have like kind of a free PDF guide. I think it's like 20 or 30 pages long of how to
Yes.
locate and track down. But it's not easy. The resources that you're giving for listeners is a great place to start. Your book, The Little Book of Missing Money. We're speaking with Mary Pitman, author of The Little Book of Missing Money. Mary, on the podcast notes, I'll have a link to the book, but if listeners would like to find out more information or get a copy of the book, how would they go about doing that?
Well, your local bookstore can order it. Any bookstore can order it. It's also available in ebook and print format on Amazon.
Perfect,
The
perfect. And
ebook is a little bit easier because you can click on the link and go directly instead of having to enter the URL.
You can get it electronically there. So I have my reader's copy that you sent me, and it's right on my desk because I've had to refer to it. So it's a good resource to have. And if you're driving, don't worry about it. You can there'll be a link to that on the podcast notes as well. Some other questions that I had for you here, and this is a little bit I'm going to pivot just a little bit because you shared with me your other hat that you wear before you wrote the book, that you were also a nurse.
Yes.
And that you were actually about to go to New York. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. I've been a nurse for 39 years. And I wrote the book with the heart of a nurse. My main background is emergency room. I was a trauma nurse educator. I taught EMTs. I taught paramedics. I taught flight nursing. I was an instructor or instructor trainer in all the certification courses. And then for 19 years, I've worked in PACU, post anesthesia, where patients come out of surgery and as they're emerging from the anesthesia. And I'll be going to New York University. I'm not sure which of their hospitals I'm going to, but I'll start there on April 13th for 8 weeks, doing 48
Wow.
hours a week.
So we're not just talking to an author, we're also talking to a hero, because you were about to go right into a hot spot there. So I'm going to say thank you for that. So I digress. I'll go back to, but I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you for your work and your service there with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Going back to the book of Missing Money, what other, I would say, non-traditional things have not come on people's radar? Do you have other examples of say, odd or things that we wouldn't particularly think about?
Yes. If you know there's an inheritance out there, but you can't find it. Now, this doesn't work in every state, but for example, in New York, if that's where your loved one lived, here's the one thing. The insurance policies, if they're unclaimed, they get turned over to the state that they were purchased in. So that's a key factor in looking for that. But in the state of New York, you can enter under last name, estate of, or the estate. It'll bring up over 35,000 listings. Those are listings that if you don't look for it the way it's listed, you won't find it. In California, the same thing brings up over 89,000 listings. So that's a huge thing.
That one detail there, for many people, they don't realize it, but one of the things that we, and say harp on, but we really try to remind people is to get their estate planning in order. And so I know, at least in Texas, if you die without a will or without anything in place, then that will get turned over. If it doesn't go through the probate, it will pass on to your estate. So if you're trying to look at like what you just shared with us, if you're trying to look it up by their name and you don't find it, it would be worth your time to try to enter it in as the estate of. Probably means that estate did not get settled, and that you've left kind of a mess behind for your beneficiaries there. It probably didn't end up the way you thought it was going to end up, but you're kind of giving them the key here to go back in and find that money. You probably have to go through some hoops to show that you're the right person to get it. But if you didn't know about it, here's a way to look it up. And I know that will probably vary from state to state, but that's huge. What other things?
Another huge thing, I've got one other really huge thing since we're talking about beneficiaries and a mess. People don't realize that the named beneficiary on their life insurance policy or retirement plan or any type of royalty, including writing, publishing, music, video, oil, minerals, timber, any type of royalty, the named beneficiary overrides anything in your will. So if your ex-spouse was on your life insurance policy and you in your will left everything to your kids, that ex-wife is going to get the money. That ex-spouse is going to get the money if that's who's named on the life insurance policy. So an actionable thing that people can do right now is check your life insurance policy, update not only the name of the beneficiary, they may have died since you started the policy, and also their contact information, and make sure they know about it.
That is huge. That is huge. I've got some very real stories there, and particularly their divorce stories where, the person was married, they got divorced, they updated beneficiaries on other stuff, but forgot about this life insurance policy. And guess what? Who gets that money? Ex-husband 1 or ex-husband 2?
Yes.
That's the worst thing you want to leave behind for a spouse. If those weren't if it was your intentions, okay. But if it wasn't your intentions, then making sure to get all of that stuff set up and corrected, and that it is following what you want it to do is hugely important. So I'm glad you brought that up. That is extremely important. We've got just a few more minutes here. What other things do you want to share with listeners before we wrap the show up?
Well, my goal is to make my book obsolete. I know that's counterintuitive for an author, but my goal is that people know what to do to prevent their money from going to the state, so we don't have this problem. It can be simple things like cash every check as soon as you get it. I got contacted by an investigative reporter for ABC looking for help for a guy who lost a check for $75,000, or found a check like 10 years later for $75,000. Nobody would cash it. And the bank, the company that issued it, said, we don't keep records that far back. So anyway, have some type of customer initiated activity on each of your accounts, and this includes your stocks and investments. In Florida, I just got a notice that the prepaid college tuition plan was, let's see, and I'm sure other states have this too. They may be entitled to an unclaimed refund. These are accounts that were canceled 7 years ago, and I bet these people don't know that. I bet they put the money in there, thought it'll be there when they're ready for college. No, and if these people don't claim it by December 31st, they're going to lose out. They will lose the investment they made. So check with if you did that for your kids or grandkids, please check with your state program and see what the rules are.
I love it. I love it. Mary, thank you so much. That's another example there where there is a ticking clock that if you do not do some detective work and try to track that stuff down, it will just fall off of the face of the earth. So nobody likes to give money away. And if you can catch it in time, you'll be able to get at least some of it back. If not all of it, you'll at least get a portion of it back. So that's super important. Mary, we're right here that was the fastest 30 minutes ever. Mary, thank you so much for being on the show today. Good luck. I just wanted to say thank you again for stepping up there and as you head off into New York. And we will be thinking about you. And I will point listeners to your book as well, The Little Book of Missing Money. Mary, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Chris. I hope it was helpful to your listeners.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. Drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.